What if you could reclaim your energy and feel younger, have better memory, and live longer? I'm your host for Natural AF. I'm Isaac.
And I'm Alexa.
And this episode, we dive into some very, very interesting topics with a literal shaman, shamanic healer, researcher, teacher, and all-around legend, Joel Schafer.
And I don't think he actually claims to be a shaman, but he is trained by some very powerful shamans, and he's such a wealth of knowledge. It was such an honor to have him on. Absolutely love this conversation. It was very interesting. We had a lot of tech issues where Joel literally just kept dropping out, and he was like, I'm sitting right above where my Wi-Fi is. This never happens. It was very bizarre. We found it very interesting considering the topic, and we found that as the interview went on and we kind of went a little further away from talking about more of the shamanic topics, it seemed to get better. And we're not making any claims here, but we did kind of think that there might have been some interference there.
Yeah, it's interesting. Things like this do happen from time to time. And we've had some technical difficulties with other spiritually I don't know what to really say. I don't want to like oversell them, but people that I think are more tapped in spiritually or more connected just have a whole lot of energy going on. And depending on your viewpoint of it, whether they're being blocked or whether their energy is just attenuating the field and things change and the signal gets interrupted. I don't know, but it's something to be observant about, but not to be despairing about. So
yeah, so bear that in mind as the conversation goes on. You might find at some points the conversation's a little bit disjointed. We've done our best to piece it all together because it literally dropped out about 6 or 7 times. We've never had that happen before. It was really crazy. Like so many gold nuggets in this. Like I need to go back and re-listen to the whole thing in its entirety, because it's just, I had so many moments after this interview where things just landed in a different way. And I think that these teachings that Joel is talking about are so incredibly powerful.
Yeah. And this is reclaiming some of that old knowledge that'll help us become more free, more capable, more competent, more in tune and in touch with the natural world, which is a big part of what this show's about.
Yeah.
And, part of our own quests, our own individual journeys that eventually led us to come together. And this is going to be fun. So I hope you get a lot out of it. Let us know, share this with people that you think might get a kick out of it, and
highly recommend
keep the conversation going.
And highly recommend working with Joel. Isaac and I have actually booked in to have a consultation with him because we really want to dive deeper into this work, and we'll definitely keep you guys posted on that and what we start to do, because I find this stuff really, really exciting, and I think that this is very much needed at this time that we're currently in.
Yeah, right. So we're coming up on the close of September. On the month of September, we've got a sale for everyone on naturalartform.com. If you haven't yet purchased Alleviate or you want to reorder, we're doing a deal where you can save $5 off any other product with the purchase of Alleviate at naturalartform.com. The coupon code for that is bundle5, bundle the number 5. You can see that in the show notes. And it's also on the website. If you go there, the front page should show the code in case you forget it.
And of course, when you head to the website, if you're not on our mailing list already, be sure to join. You'll get an extra 10% off. You get a separate discount code, just discount codes all around. And that'll be the place where you'll get all the latest news first. And we've got some exciting events coming up, which I can now confirm. But again, you'll get them if you're on the mailing list. You'll get all the details first there. We're going to be down in Sydney for an event at the end of October. And then we're going to be up on the Sunshine Coast for an event in early November. So sign up to the mailing list and we'll let you know more about that very soon.
I think this will be the episode where I'm gonna have some fun, and I'm gonna stick a little funny ad insert for Alleviate in here. So if you don't know what Alleviate is, stay tuned for that in the episode. I had some fun the other day after we recorded one of our intros, and I just brought out a prop and just had some fun. So
well, this is news to me, so I'll be watching along with you guys.
Yeah. Anyways, any other updates, any announcements?
Yes, one more thing. So if you're a regular listener, you know I've been talking about my women's program, Aligned Woman, that's been coming up. So the details did go out to the priority list first last week. It will be going public this week. So in the meantime, if you do want to know about that first and you haven't joined the priority list, I'll have the link in the show notes, head to my website where you can join my regular mailing list, and that'll go out to everyone there this week.
Exciting stuff. All right, well, let's get into the episode.
Enjoy. Joel Schafer is a personal empowerment mentor and shamanic dreaming arts teacher. Through online courses, one-on-one mentoring, and in-person workshops, Joel trains people in a highly effective way to reclaim vital energy and attention, utilizing the Toltec knowledge base. These are powerful non-linear redistribution techniques that guide and support students in discovering clear purpose, increasing awareness, getting grounded, reclaiming focus, and accessing strong intent. Joel is also an excellent listener and mirror, offering practical but magical solutions to life's challenges.
Welcome, Joel, to Natural AF.
Oh, thanks for having me. Good to see you guys.
Yeah, it's so great to have you on. I met you through Leanne Lapinto's community group, and it was actually Leanne that recommended a particular interview that you'd done with her. And then I listened to a couple more, and I was like, instantly, we have to get Joel on. You just are such a wealth of knowledge in all things shamanic and the spiritual realm, and I just find it so fascinating.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I've had a really interesting life and trained with a lot of powerful people, and I'm happy to talk about anything and everything. I've been in a lot of intense apprenticeships in different parts of the country and worked with some really old ancient shamanic people, and I mostly focus on lucid dreaming and these shamanic movements, and we work on life review, memory stuff like soul retrieval work, but a lot of ceremony, a lot of intense stuff.
Amazing. Yeah. So up our alley.
Yeah, I'm dying to know what started your journey into this. What brought you to the awareness of the shamanic world, and how did you get introduced and, initiated into that?
Yeah, I met a really powerful shaman when I was 16, and he introduced me to the Carlos Castaneda material. And it's a real depth of information that a lot of people question whether it's real or not. I happen to know the people that were associated with Castaneda and the teachers that he learned from. And I ended up meeting a lot of those elders. And It's very real and it's very powerful. And those books changed my life. And I've read them over and over and over and over and over and over. And every time I read them, it's like the never-ending story. It keeps giving and giving and giving, because you're not meant to understand certain things until you've reached a certain state of awareness. And then all of a sudden, you start to understand the depths of what they're sharing. And then I ended up leaving that apprenticeship with that first shaman and going to train with a really powerful sorcerer type man in New Mexico. And we lived near the Apache reservation, and it was quite powerful. He was a community in which he had like hundreds of people coming to visit every year from all over the world. And so I got to meet some really powerful people, especially a lot of people from New Zealand and Australia that came over to New Mexico. Peru, the singing woman from Australia, was one of the most powerful medicine women we trained with. And so it's just a fascinating way of jumping deep into the depths of a community that was focused on sweat lodge, vision quest, learning lucid dreaming, remote viewing, telepathy, all the cool stuff.
Yeah, just for our listeners, if you could just give just a brief, who was Carlos Castaneda? Why did that pique your interest?
Yeah, he sort of is considered the godfather of the New Age movement. He wrote some books in the 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s throughout his apprenticeship. And it's just an explanation of an apprenticeship that he went through. And his teacher, Juan Matus, and his other teachers that were associated with that lineage, they pretty much put him through the ringer. Like he was forced to change through a series of trickery and events that were really extreme. And he was given peyote and datura and some really intense medicines as a means to blast him open, because he was really dense. He started off as an anthropologist at UCLA, and he went out into the field to try to find an informant to learn about peyote. And what he ended up finding was somebody that could move his perception without peyote. But he refused to believe that these things were possible. So his teacher took it upon himself to give him some heavy doses of medicine other apprentices of the same teacher were not given the power plants at all. They were just able to train without the medicine. So it's not required. There's other ways of learning. But because Carlos was so dense, that they decided that it was worth the risk to give him quite a big dose of medicine. And the books are just, it's an explanation of his apprenticeship, in which eventually he led to teaching workshops all over the world, where he taught something called magical passes, which are shamanic movements similar to Tai Chi or Qigong, but they come from the shamans of ancient Mexico, and they're designed to induce lucid dreaming. There's also Taisha Abelard and Florinda Donner Grau, who were cohorts, dreamers of similar, or had the same teachers. So it was just a system of knowledge that was passed on to him. And then he became very fluid and lucid.
And is he still alive, by the way?
No, yeah, he died in
Okay.
97. But the female apprentices that were apprenticing Don Juan as well, they are still alive. They moved down to South America. A lot of controversy about why they left, and people make up a lot of stories about what happened. But they're very powerful beings that learned the secret of perception, and they were able to live in more than one layer of the onion. So they're very unique people that are still present here, but they're not offering any teachings. They've kind of moved into a different way of existing. And so Taisha Abelard and Florinda Donner Grau also wrote some books that are just as powerful as Carlos Castaneda's books. So I recommend women read those books, because they're more appropriate to a woman's relationship with power. And so, I'm part of my quest and mission is to make sure people know about this material, because not everybody does, and it's really powerful stuff. But yeah, Carlos was he was a really powerful person, and his workshops were really, really unique. And I teach these things in my workshops as well. So I do online courses and in-person workshops. We're going to be doing Sedona, Arizona this winter in December. And so there's lots of ways to jump into this work.
Yeah, that's fascinating. I'm curious what your views are of the sort of the new age world as it's become. Like as you mentioned, Carlos Castaneda, you said was kind of like the progenitor of the new age thing, but I have the opinion that it became what it became without him, after he did. Because the new age is a bit, there's a lot of like spiritual bypassy type stuff and a lot of other ideas that people are coming up with.
Well, it's definitely been hijacked. I think we see that quite often, is that where these really powerful and truthful things emerge, they kind of almost have to be hijacked by the quote unquote powers that be. So that they can be manipulated, and so that people are led away from the truth.
Yeah, for sure. It's become super spiritual and syrupy and fake and retarded, to be honest. So it's just terrible. But it is what it is, there's nothing we can really do about that except find our own authentic relationship with power. Toltecs are not spiritual. They're energetic and practical. So they're doing real work. And so it's really hard to find authentic training these days, because it's been so sugared up, and it's a lot of bypassing. And we want to be in touch with our anger, not pretending that we don't have emotional intensity. We need to know our power, and anger is a superpower. So people are pretending, and it's very fake and weak. But, that's part of this realm, is being able to determine the difference and have discernment.
What does that mean, that anger is a superpower?
We need to be able to access this place of no pity, where we stop feeling sorry for ourselves or anyone else. And that there's this incredible capacity to do things when you can access your rage in a healthy way without putting it on somebody else, but being able to do physical things or energetic things. We need to know our capacity to direct our intent, and we call it unbending intent. And we have a reason to be angry. There's something trying to feed off of our energy, and it's very disturbing. And so we need to be in touch with our power and be able to properly take care of ourselves by not repressing or suppressing any feelings. And it takes a real unique person to be able to come into contact with the depths of their feelings.
Yeah,
That's so true.
that really resonates. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'd love to, like, while we're kind of in this realm of like new age spirituality, because you mentioned that Carlos Castaneda,
Yeah.
that he was given peyote, but not everyone needs that on their journey. And of course, you know, that brings up this topic now of plant medicine, which is so huge because it's kind of like the wild, wild west out there at the moment where, you know, people are going and doing these journeys, you know, once, maybe twice, and then all of a sudden they're a quote unquote shaman. And, you know, people, we've had a friend of ours on the show that shared his experience with ayahuasca. He did it over in, I think, Peru, and it was done sort of like the traditional way, but he was given way too much too soon. It was done over days and it actually really damaged him. He's spent the better part of the last decade repairing the damage that was done through that experience. And we see it, like, it's actually quite rampant in this part of Australia where we live. It's actually quite rampant where these, like, people in these spiritual communities are going and doing, like, we know someone that's done 8 ayahuasca journeys in, I don't know what space of time. But some of the things that I've learned over the last few years is that these things are kind of done as like an initiation, and you should always, like, you should feel called. And there's like all these really specific things, but people just don't seem to be aware of it and are just sort of using it now as this thing that gets them to this altered state of being. And then they're coming back from these journeys and not actually integrating, and then just going back for more in a few months' time. So I'd love to hear your perspective on that whole thing.
Yeah, thank you. It's such an important topic. If you're not, if you're not integrating and you're going right back into it, then you're just going to be overwhelming your system, and there's just too much to process. And it's not needed at all. You don't have to even do it one time. You can do the shamanic movements, you can practice recapitulating, and that will lead to being able to have incredible states of heightened awareness. But people like shortcuts, and they want to expedite the process, and it's everyone's choice, but it's a dangerous choice, because you can get a part of your soul can get stuck in these different density layers, and it can be really difficult to recover that part of you, because the plant medicine puts you in situations, and if the shamans aren't being careful with you, they'll take you on journeys that you're not ready for. And, so it's unfortunate that that's the time we're in, but we are in a world where the forces that are higher on the food chain are manipulating people as a means to make sure that we end up overdoing it or underdoing it. You're either a victim or you're victorious. Neutrality is key. Being able to suspend judgment, not put yourself above or below people. And escapism is a major reason why people are turning to these medicines rather than doing the shadow work, which would lead to the ultimate honest process that you would need to go through in order to truly heal and become whole.
Yeah, and just on that too, because you can probably share, because I don't know the details fully, but when you said like the way that it's kind of manipulated as well, Christopher Gardner has shared an experience that he had in Costa Rica.
Yeah, I've interviewed Topher before on my channel.
Oh yeah,
cool. Yeah, so I don't know if you shared that story on your show, but he was explaining the UN messages that he was actually hearing and conscious of in this ayahuasca ceremony in Costa Rica. And it had something to do about, climate change and a lot of the kind of high points of propaganda that we're used to now.
Yeah.
And after the ceremony, as they were sort of sitting around talking and kind of integrating the experience, he had a few people basically repeating back to him those exact messages as if they had come to it themselves, completely unaware that there was like a transmission coming in. So
that's wild.
So
there's so much of that
stuff
going on. Yeah, it's major interference, and it's unfortunate. It's just that we are being accessed in so many ways, and even with the plant medicines, and so there's a reason why it's so popular. So it's definitely something to consider, and be very discerning about who we learn from and where we go and what kind of training is appropriate for each person.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, it makes sense that where there's truth, where there's some power to things, they like to piggyback onto it and use it as an injection system for their ideology. But so for me, just to bring in a little bit of context. So when I first started Natural AF, the first episode was immediately after I had to put down a horse. I had shot a horse that was 33 years old,
Wow.
No accident there, but it was a family horse that fell down, couldn't get back up. But that experience really prompted this desire in me to reconnect with my native lineage, because it just felt like, going back all these ages, my family, my dad's side, there's Navajo, and maybe 3 generations back in New Mexico, and we're completely cut off from them. But just the idea of having reverence for this animal, love for it, and killing it, looking it in the eye, breathing into it, and killing it, and then burning sage and offering gratitude for that animal's life. Mm-hmm. There's a real gravity to that, and I think, just awaken something in me. But I have so much, curiosity and reverence for your journey and what you've learned, and I can't help but think, there's a lot for me here in this type of space. But I feel very compelled to say that it, definitely not accident that led us to bringing you on to be kind of the first real person to talk about this kind of thing, because I think you understand it at a level separate from all the artificial fluff that is super common these days.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to say that.
Yeah, thanks for saying that. When I was part of a construction company in New Mexico, and I was asked to clear a lot and kill all the trees, to cut down all the trees for the lot. And I was like, I can't do that. I can build a house for you, but I can't kill these trees. But then I talked to my elder about it, and he said, you know what, it would be better if you were the one to offer tobacco to each tree and say thank you and honor each one, and you be the one to respectfully fall these trees rather than somebody else who is unconscious. So sometimes coming out of the spiritual concepts and being open that we have to do some really difficult tasks sometimes that are very uncomfortable as part of this relationship that we have with the mother, whether it's animals or trees. It's all connected to the earth, and the earth mother is conscious and she understands. It's, so spirituality can hijack and get in the way of our ability to do what is needed. So I'm glad you were able to be the one to look in the eyes of the horse and say goodbye and put it out of its misery.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And it was, I think it's a good passage for men to think about, to just knowing that I was the one in my family that, because I have 3 older brothers, but being the one that my family trusted, my mother trusted to execute this. Execute's probably the wrong word, but to
carry it out,
to just carry this out and handle it competently.
And there's something about, it's really interesting because when Isaac and I met, he had just launched the podcast, and because obviously we met online, he was still in the States at the time, and I listened to that first episode, and that always stuck with me, that story, because I'll never forget when he said, it was like this reconnection to nature, but also the hard parts of nature. And I think we often forget that there is always this duality. And that always stuck with me. And and then when we were getting to know each other, it was really crazy, because I was like, I had a similar experience about almost a year prior to meeting him, where it was a similar thing with my pet dog at the time. He was literally like my baby. I used to always say, he's like my baby. He just used to follow me around like a shadow, and the closest thing to me. And when he passed, he was really unwell for about 4 months, and then he actually passed away in my arms, and it was the hardest loss I've ever had to deal with. And that was such a huge initiation for me. And I think, and that's what we really related on, was this initiation of experiencing death in whatever way that is, and the rebirth that comes from that. And I
Yes.
think, you know, we just was speaking about initiation on our last episode, and we were saying how we've really lost that part of, you know, growing up and like entering these new stages of life and being initiated into that. We've completely lost that. And you can see it in modern society, like just purely by the state that people are in and how they're living.
Oh, yeah. For Toltecs, death is just like a second birth, and that they say that death is your advisor. You want to keep death really close to you because it's stalking you, and so you want to be in contact with the fact that we're not permanent. They say that, you know, life is the arena and death is the player. And if it wasn't for death, life wouldn't even be anything like what it is. And so people behave like they're immortal, like they're going to live forever. But if we could start behaving more consciously and aware that we're going to die, then we would really value our time here, and we would become that much more sharp and aware. And we need to bring death back into the picture as a means to remain powerful. Otherwise, we become domesticated. So this is a rewilding process, and that doesn't mean you have to go build a cabin in the woods with your bare hands. It's rewilding has to do with doing shadow work and becoming a lucid dreamer, becoming capable of making use of your perception, having communication with animals, you know, being able to spend time in nature and feel the impermanence of things, and having a reverence and a respect for the power of these forces. But if we continue down this path that we're heading, you know, we will perish as a species. We have to bring back the power. And I think we will, because I think the forces that are playing out, they're so becoming so obvious that it's going to awaken a lot of people, and that courage is going to spread. Just like fear spreads, courage is going to spread too. And we're going to become more in touch with our immortality, our mortality, rather than pretending that we're immortal.
Yeah, absolutely. And I really can't wait to dive into the lucid dreaming,
Yeah.
because I've always been so fascinated by it. But you did mention, because just part of, like, I imagine this is would you consider recapitulation a type of shadow work or part of shadow work? And can you explain what that process is?
Yeah, there's a way of taking your energy back from memories. Like, we leave our energy everywhere we go. We leave our luminosity behind, and we're not meant to, but it's just like behavior that's been trained into us. So, like, if you were to give away some clothes to the Goodwill or whatever, we leave all of our essence in those garments, in those clothing. We forget to like take our left hand and put it on that t-shirt and pull our energy back. And so you can go back and do that any point, because time is not linear. So our memories are actually still happening, and recapitulation is just the art of reclaiming your soul essence. It's soul retrieval work, basically. And there's a type of breathing that you can do where you scan from one side of your shoulder to the other while you're inhaling and then exhaling on the way back with your eyes closed, and you're seeing a memory, and you're just really trying to get the essence of that memory to return to you. And then you want to, on the inhale, you're bringing in your energy you left there, and on the exhale, you're giving any energy that you took on from anyone else or any situation that you might have absorbed. So we're not meant to pick up all these filaments of energy from all these people, and we're not meant to leave our energy with others. So like an ex-partner or parents or, you know, anything like this, we want to clean up our life. And it's the ultimate form of purification. It's energetic purification. And it's when you're exhaling, it feels like you're purging we call it puking up your past. There's like acidic memory that comes out your mouth. And when you're inhaling, you're actually bringing your power back into you. You weren't meant to leave it all over the place like that. And it's the most powerful act that I think anyone can discover. It's really difficult to do because there's great pressure on us from the forces that are higher on the food chain to not figure this out. Because if enough of us were to do this, then we would not be so accessible. And so shamans seek to become mysterious and less accessible and start to have a life that is more meaningful and purposeful. And you can slow time down this way. and you can turn your 90, 100 years into like what would feel like thousands of years, because every day starts to get longer and longer, and you can reverse age, you can become younger, and it's basically retrieving your youthful energy. And once you do that, your imagination and creativity goes into high gear, and that's where lucid dreaming becomes next level.
Wow, that's a lot there.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
So that probably explains why I feel like I've left a lot of my energy in different places. Even just before I moved to Australia from the States, I basically did a fire sale with all these tools and all this stuff because I was running my own business, and just like bam, out the door, onto the next thing. And then had a feeling of sense of loss and not being able to reclaim that. Awareness is the first step in a lot of things. So
you can definitely, even though you did that, you can still go back and like review that time and recollect your energy that you left in all those tools. I'm in the same boat right now. I'm about to sell all my tools, and it's part of life is to sometimes release the inventory, not carry so much luggage, right? We don't want to be carrying all this stuff around all over the world. So when it's time to reset your life, sometimes that fire sale is important to do, but there's a way to do it more consciously for sure.
And I know when I first heard you talk about this, you mentioned that you can basically go through your whole life, and you know people that have done that. How long does that take someone?
Well, it seems impossible when you start off. It's like, how could I ever cover that much material? But once you start doing it, this weird development happens where your memories they surface, and it's like a treasure chest opens, and all these memories that you had compartmentalized, they all start to come to you. And you're like, wow, it's just like, I forgot all about this time in my life. And then it's like all these feelings return, and you just start breathing through each feeling. And so somebody that's done a thorough recapitulation usually spends about 2 years, and doing it like 4 hours a day. And it's very difficult to stay that focused. But when you're able to do it, it's so worth doing. So you just want to start with the most recent memories because they're the freshest. And then you start going backwards through time. And eventually you can remember being in the womb.
Wow.
And what sort of things would you expect to have change or like you said, regaining energy and creativity?
You get lighter and lighter, right? So you become energy, you become non-physical, you become a luminous being, you become essentially, it's like all the lucidity kicks in incredible ways. So you become capable of seeing energy directly as it flows in the universe rather than only interacting in a physical world. And the lucidity doesn't just happen at nighttime, it happens during the daytime. So it's like being on mushrooms all the time without having to take any.
Wow. Okay, so that's a perfect segue into lucid dreaming, because I've always been very fascinated by it because I'm a very vivid dreamer. I always have been. And like I can remember dreams I've had in childhood. I can remember dreams that I had years ago. So I've never lucid dreamt, but sorry, I have once or twice spontaneously, and this was years ago before I even really knew what lucid dreaming was. I think the first time, the one that I can really remember, and I think it probably was the first time, was I just got to a point in the dream where I realized like I could do whatever I wanted, and I was like flying through things, and it was awesome. And then I could never, ever do it again. And then since learning about it in the last few years, I've had experiences where it's weird because even like more recently I have, like I said, I have super, super vivid dreams, but I now will dream where there's a part of me that's aware that's aware that I'm dreaming, but I can't. I'm not in full lucidity. Like I can't control the dream, but I'll often get to a point in the dream where I'm aware that this is only a dream, and so whatever's happening, I don't feel so like some dreams are obviously quite emotional and it feels really real. It doesn't feel like that because I'm like, there's this part of me that knows I'm dreaming. And so that's why I feel like for me, like in terms of like my, you know, the way I express like, you know, my spirituality, my energetic expression, I feel like there's so much space for me to grow in the dream world, because for me it already is something that I feel super familiar with. Because I know like for Isaac, he doesn't really dream, and I know a lot of people that are like, I never dream, or they don't remember them. But it's like every night for me. I always wake up and tell Isaac my dreams. It's like a movie in your head every night. I'm like, yeah, pretty much.
Oh, cool. Yeah, some people, you know, everyone does dream every night. It's just that some people's perception moves so far away that it's not translatable back when you wake up. It's just too far of a perceptual jump. And so just everyone has a different relationship with that. But it's all stored in our memory. So when we die, all of our memories flash before our eyes, including every dream we've ever had. It's really intense. So we want to gain access to that inventory through the recapitulation. But yeah, lucid dreaming, I remember as a kid, I was lucid, and then something showed up around 4 or 5 and started interfering with me. It was getting in the way. I'm like, get out of my, what's going on? Like something was interfering. And, you know, years later, reading Castaneda, I was able to come to terms with the types of forces that interfere with us and try to make it difficult for us to do our own traveling. We're meant to travel into other worlds, and dreaming is the way in which shamans do that. And there's a way to cross gates where you go from one dreaming gate to another dreaming gate to another dreaming gate. And eventually you can reach a world that's more real than the one you and I are in right now. And so this is an illusion that we are experiencing. It's a vision that we're having collectively, and we don't have to stay here. The Mayans figured out how to walk out of this dream and go into a different dream and stay there permanently. We might need to learn how to do that eventually if the world gets too tricky. So these are powerful things you can learn to practice. And it's incredible to have the capacity to fly, to control your dreams, to go into other layers of the onion, or to go into wormholes. I can enter dreaming while I'm awake through sun gazing. If I'm sun gazing long enough, all these colors start to come into to my field, and I go from one color to the next color, and I forget where I am. I forget that I'm sitting on a dock on the lake. You know, I can't remember how I even got to where I am. And all of a sudden I'm traveling through like stars and like the cosmos. And then all of a sudden I pop into like this other layer, and I'm inside of a memory. But I'm experiencing it from like a second hand. I'm like watching myself do things from the past. So this world is so magical and incredible, and our ability to use dreams in magical ways. Like you want to try to look for your hands when you realize you're dreaming. And then if you can do that, then you can start looking around and look for any objects that are strange. If you look in the corner of the room and there's like a pencil sharpener or something, it might start spinning. And that means that that is an inorganic being that can take you into these wormholes. So you have to ask it to take you, and then it will pull you down a wormhole, and you'll go into these worlds. And these beings are in there, interdimensional beings, and they'll start teaching you things about how to fly differently, how to float, how to suspend time. But they're trickster spirits. They might try to keep you there. So you have to be very careful. The world is has a lot of predators, just like this world. There's all kinds of things to consider when you become capable of going into these other layers. So I recommend going slow, not using too many substances to try to do these things. Try to figure out a sober way to travel so that you don't accidentally get yourself into a situation that you can't get yourself out of.
Yeah.
Well, that's really where the power is at. I mean, it's almost like cheat codes or cheating when you take the substance. And I know there's, you know, the countering position to that as well.
Sure.
But if what you're describing is true, and I feel like it is, because during the day, because my dreaming is very fits and starts, and it comes on seemingly out of nowhere. But I'll be in deep in thought, and it's almost like I stop seeing what's in front of me, and I'm only seeing what's in here. And it's sometimes it's a memory, sometimes it's if I'm contemplating a project that I want to see to fruition, I'm actually visualizing it. And some of those can be very vivid and very powerful, and then it's like I snap out of it and it's completely gone. But
yeah, and I think what you said about the like being careful with substances makes so much sense to me, because I'll never forget probably one of the worst dream experiences I ever had was, and it was I was let's be real, I was abusing prescription pills at the time that weren't prescribed to me. It was Xanax that I was taking quite a bit at the time, like sort of recreationally, and I what do they call it? Like sleep paralysis. I think it was like this sleep paralysis where I was having a nightmare. I woke up out of the nightmare in another dream, and then realized and then that was also a nightmare, and then realized I was like, oh, I'm still dreaming. I need to wake up. And then I woke up again into another dream. And that last layer was, again, I thought I'd woken up because I was in my actual house that I lived in at the time. But then all these shadowy things were like, it was so, I literally woke up in my bed. I woke up like, and then when I actually realized I was finally back awake in this world, I just burst into tears. It was the most terrifying thing I've ever experienced. And what I now know is that, especially I think we've spoken about this on another episode, I 100% believe that pharmaceutical drugs are a form of black magic. I think that they're the way that they're made and the energy that goes into them and all of that. And so I fully believe that was like a gateway to these demonic, parasitic, whatever you want to call them, these entities that were feeding off that fear that I was experiencing in that dream. So that makes so much sense to me in terms of substances and dreaming and sort of, the things that might happen.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. I know people that have been pinned to the ceiling by other beings and stuck for long periods of time. And I've experienced the same thing. I'd be in a hotel room and I wake up in the room and the bed is on the opposite side of the hotel room. And I'm like, what's going on? How did that happen? And then, and I'm stuck there and I can't get myself to wake up into this dream again.
Yeah.
And it can be very uncomfortable. But yeah, with Xanax, with pharmaceuticals, they are designed as in a very powerful way with these hooks by very, very, very powerful chemists that know how to manipulate people's perception with these medicines. So, I mean, they shouldn't be called medicine. It's just poison. But it's unfortunate because the plant medicines are a lot safer than these pharmaceutical medicines, but they've taken the plant medicines and extracted them and then done things to them to make sure that they have a much more negative effect than what we could benefit from the plants, because there is a time and a place for plant medicines depending on what's going on with the person. And I'm sorry that happened to you, but it's a good lesson to learn and you're okay now. And
definitely big lesson learned there. And I do also want to ask, in terms of the lucid dreaming, because you mentioned that the recapitulation can help. And so, what are the things that kind of block us, would you say, from being able to experience that lucid dreaming experience, or just like you said, even in your day-to-day life, being able to experience that lucidity?
Yeah, it's just we have to figure out a way to be in silence instead of thinking. We're always talking to ourselves. And somehow we have to learn to go not only meditate, but go past the meditation and experience what you call stopping the world. So I'll be gazing at the trees and all of a sudden the world starts to shapeshift and I start to see another dimension, like castles or buildings in the forest, and they're not really there, and yet I'm seeing them. Carlos Castaneda walked on a bridge made of fog, right? Wow. So this world is magical perceptually, but you have to believe. You have to totally believe what you're doing, otherwise you would die, right? So people try to jump off cliffs because they think they're going to turn into eagles or something, and they end up dead at the bottom. Like you can't pretend or try to force this. You have to totally be immersed in the perceptual intensity in order to navigate those things. And so my elder, his uncles used to cross canyons. They would just walk right across the canyon and walk right back because they didn't see,
Wow.
they didn't observe the fall. They were just able to step right over it. And so these are really powerful things that we could learn to do. And we're going to need to learn how to use perception in a magical way. But yeah, the forces that are here, they're very hungry for our energy, and they want us to remain accessible food to them. And so they're going to try to put great pressure on us not to recapitulate or not to make use of our perceptual gifts. And so you have to
Mm.
become indifferent and detached. And you can't be angry with these beings. They're just attracted to our bright light. We have incredible luminosity,
Mm.
and it's just like you see like a piece of fruit and it makes you thirsty and hungry. They feel the same way about us. It's just
Mm.
coming to terms with the fact that we are a delicacy to these creatures, and there is a way to discipline yourself and live an impeccable life so that you no longer have the type of energy that they're interested in. You can make your energy so powerful that they find it to be bitter, and they're no longer willing they're no longer trying to
Mm.
nibble off of your luminosity. And that's what shamans focus on, is living such a powerful life that they are no longer um, susceptible to that type of interference.
That's amazing. That excites me
Yeah,
so much because it's like when you start hearing that, yeah, people are actually living like this, it just opens up so much more possibility.
totally. Yeah, there's so much we can do with our time here. And once you start practicing the movements that I teach that's what makes it possible to recapitulate, is the movements. You're like breaking energy on the side of your field and grabbing it with your claws and pulling it and lending it to your organs. It's super powerful, and same with like what Leanne does, the reparenting breath work, like getting into your emotional wounding and starting to
Mm.
clear any stuff that needs to move. That also will make you younger. And we need that youthful energy back in order to be creative enough and fall in love with our existence to the point that we become passionate about having a path of knowledge. And knowledge is not information. Knowledge is power. Knowledge is
Mm.
the secret of perception. Information is not necessary. What is necessary is that we reclaim our luminosity, and that we become like animals, like birds, where we can focus really strongly, and you start to you move beyond the five senses. You start to be able to shape shift in your dreams into animals, into the earth, into trees. You start having conversations with trees. If we practice something called witnessing, where you go and tell a tree some of your stories, and the tree will take on any of your past, and it will help you release your personal history, because we're not meant to be like we used to be. We want to be changing daily. And when that starts to happen for you, then you start to forget, or you start to be less identified with who you used to be, and you start to live in the now
Mm.
rather than being tied to your past.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. Actually, and again, that just brings up a memory from that time when I lost my dog.
Mm.
So we're on 10 acres on our property, and there's we've got a dam. It's a bit bigger than a dam, but it's like this body of water. And when you walk past that, you're basically in a forest in the bush. And there's this huge, we call it our grandfather tree. And I've always felt a very strong masculine energy from him. And after my dog died, I think it was like the day after, because we had like buried him. He died at night. We'd like buried him on the property. And then when I woke up the next day, it was funny. I was just kind of sitting at where he was buried. And then I just kind of felt I wasn't thinking to do anything. I just got up and walked into the forest and went to this tree. And I actually think it was the first time I'd gone in and just gone to this tree. And I literally just hugged it. And I felt so comforted, like in my grief by this tree. And it's interesting too that it was a masculine energy. It was a male dog, and it was like that. I just wanted to be held. And it was such a beautiful experience. And I've always had a really strong connection with that tree. And so what you're speaking to, I think, is, like, I think so many people are talking about this now, but I think we're really only just sort of scratching the surface, you know, as to what's possible, even in this relationship that we have with nature and in the environment around us.
Yeah, the trees are conscious and the plants are conscious, and they're actually more conscious than we are. And so we have so much to learn from them if we could listen. The Toltecs, they were so in love with the earth that rather than die, they wanted to stay longer. And a lot of them shapeshifted into trees. And so a lot of these trees that you interact with in this world are actually old sorcerers. So if you go to the redwoods in Northern California, these like perfect circles of trees, massive groves. And if you hang out with these beings, it's like being with grandfathers and grandmothers. They're very, very powerful elders that are very capable of connecting to. So, and then like a shaman will bury themselves in the earth for a couple days in order to reset their field. And you go do that in the
Wow.
presence of some really powerful trees. You get like a breathing hole so you can be under the earth, but you can still breathe. The Earth Mother is a very powerful conscious being, and she will, you know, take your pain and help you heal. Because sometimes shamans get themselves into situations where they really need some support, and the Earth Mother is the perfect, most magical creature for that. So everything's connected, and it's quite confronting to do something like that. But in an emergency, or if you had an illness or a need to work with the mother like that, it can be really effective.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. And it's funny because you often say, I think we watched a show, actually, it was based on a book, and it was like this new age spiritual like retreat, and they're doing all these things, and one of the things is they have to go and like dig their own grave, and they're like, this is crazy. And sometimes you're just like, this is kind of wild. And I've heard of like there's a really well-known cult, I can't remember the name, but they did the same thing, but it was like really quite abusive because it was like really traumatizing people. But again, it's just so interesting that you're saying this is something that they do, because it's like it's in this our field of awareness, but again, it's like been so hijacked to like what it's actually meant to do.
Of course they would pervert it and turn it into something like this, you know, to debase it.
Yeah, totally. It's too bad because, but it is what it is. We get to have the discernment to realize that, they're just doing that to make sure that people don't get to the simplicity of these things and they make it more complex. But I was in a lot of pain when my girlfriend died suddenly in a car accident when she was 19 and I was 21. And we were really close. And I went to the earth and I did dig down and get into some of the soil, and I was told to go down there and to give my pain to her. And all these, at first I couldn't cry, but I started to fake cry, and then all of a sudden the real tears started to come because I'd become kind of numb. And then all this pain started pouring out of me, and I could feel the earth taking it. But I was told, be careful, don't just get up right away. Stay there until the Earth Mother fills you with brand new, fresh energy. And I literally walked out of there floating. I completely shapeshifted my energy field because I found the mother. I found that she's a real being that can help you in the most incredible ways. And that relationship's gotten really, really strong for me.
That's powerful.
Yeah.
That's where I'm originally from in Wyoming. The national forest up there is called the Medicine Bow.
Yeah.
And I remember listening to stories about other like special forces warriors. I did some training in special operations in the Army, but one of the guys I looked up to talked about going back to Idaho into the medicine, into the forest after he'd been, I don't know, in combat zones for roughly 10 total years of deployments and all that stuff. And going in there into the woods into solitude and isolation, being in the water. Yeah. Doing,
Wow.
we called them hide sites. I'm sure there's other older names for them, but you basically make a house out of branches and put leaves and stuff over it, but you're sleeping in a hollow in the earth.
Yep.
And it just, yeah, reminds me of what you're saying. Maybe there's echoes of old practices in some of the stuff they teach. I'm Isaac, and I'm the founder of Natural Art Form and the creator of Alleviate, coming to you from the deep south of Texas, also known as Australia. This product is available on both continents, Australia and the U.S. Made by hand. It's a family-owned business, veteran-owned operation, and we're here to help you recover faster so you can get back to building and growing and protecting what's yours. Try it today. I guarantee you won't regret it. As a thank you for your support, we're offering 10% off all purchases at naturalartform.com using code NaturalAF10 for 10% off always.
Yeah, totally. There's all that stuff works really well. And I hiked in the Rocky Mountains with a backpack for many weeks, and it was a really intense thing to do, just carrying all that weight and just being out there alone. And but you come into contact with the mother on deep levels, and there's a lot of guidance that happens when you put yourself in situations like that. So there's so many ways to reconnect and to realize that this realm is magical, and that it can guide you. Vision quests, going out on the land for 4 days and 4 nights without food and water, and having to keep a fire going so there's no sleeping either.
Wow.
It's a really powerful way to do it. Yeah, so sleep deprivation and going without food or water is one of the powerful ways to alter your perception. And so these are practices that are passed on through ceremony. You do have people that are eating for you, and they're doing sweat lodge, and they're focused on lending you energy, so you don't feel as fatigued or hungry or thirsty as you would think. There's this like boost of energy you're getting from the group. And there's usually a shaman involved that's like sending you a lot of power. But yeah, 4 days, 4 nights, no food, no water, no sleep, and you will definitely have a really unique perceptual experience. The goal is to have a vision. That's why they call it a vision quest. And when that happens, it informs you of things, like helps you understand what your path is here, what your purpose is, helps you get guidance on how to navigate your life. And, it's a really, really powerful thing to do.
That's incredible.
Wow.
Yeah, and I love like just there's so many things that you're saying. Like again, just the what I shared earlier about like going to the grandfather tree, and like I remember that's when I walked into the forest. I remember I literally just started asking it to take my pain away, and I just something I'd never done that before, and I never had an awareness of like I said I didn't really know much of the stuff that I know now back then, and I think that's why it's so important too to like come back into that trust within ourselves and who we are and like how powerful we actually are. Because I know for me, I've definitely had these sort of like spontaneous healings or these really profound experiences when I didn't know what they were. I didn't really understand what was happening. It wasn't until years later that I'd come into knowledge where I'd be like, oh, that's what happened at this time. That's what I experienced. Or I'll learn something and then I'll be like, oh, that's why I was able to heal in that way. And like in this experience that I had. And like, that's why, in the work that I do with people, it's like helping them come back to who they are. Because I think the more that you do that, you are then able to open these doors, open these different gateways to these more, to these deeper experiences and start to access these, that's what I mean. Like it's funny because what's that saying? Like the more you learn, the more you realize you don't know. That's how I feel about this realm. Like when you start to go deeper and deeper and deeper, it's like, whoa, we can do that. And, I think you've just got to kind of start. I really do believe like it has to start with you. Like you can seek the knowledge and, all this information, but if you really don't know who you are, I just don't believe you'll ever get there.
Yeah. It's all about knowledge of self, and there's something called shattering the mirror of self-reflection, where you stop comparing yourself to others, and then you're no longer limited by other people's limitations. You become limitless. And it's the great unlearning. We want to unlearn everything that we've been conditioned, and that's where real knowledge becomes available. And it isn't the type of knowledge that we typically talk about. It's a more of a what we call silent knowledge. You don't need to think in order to know things. You'll be told things. That's where telepathy and direct knowing come in. And so the Akashic records people talk about, it's not a joke. You can tap directly into source and be given directly the information that you would need in order to share with somebody. And so our intuition is what we're here to develop, and an intuition and intent. Shamans talk about developing something called unbending intent, where nothing can bend your will. And you become a force to reckon with when you are no longer able to be interfered with by, these basically distractions. So the whole world is designed to distract us, and our ability to reclaim our focus and reclaim our dreaming attention is what makes lucidity so possible. And then once that happens, then you're able to create your own reality tunnels, and then you're no longer caught up in other people. You're no longer caught up in the collective. You become your own person, separate from the collective. So aloneness leads to all oneness. And then you're not at odds with what's happening in the world, because you see it as an obstacle course that's designed for your soul to develop. And so I don't care. I'm not at odds with the world at all. I think it's exactly how it's designed to be for a reason, and that not everyone is here to evolve. Some people are here, serving as tyrants, which are necessary, or serving as just buffers. If we were all on the same path, then it wouldn't be the same deal. Like, if it's because so many people are unconscious that they're being fed off, that makes it possible for you and me to be left alone, because there's plenty of other people to feed off. So we don't need to complain about anything. Toltec say that most people spend their whole life complaining about one thing or another. If you stop complaining, then you start being thankful, and your gratitude gets incredibly strong.
Absolutely.
And that's what changes everything.
That's incredibly powerful.
Yeah.
And something that came up with that, it's a vision or a picture for people to make sense of this. So the distractions you're talking about, it's almost as if there's a river going down, and they've carved little cuts away from the river to just siphon off some of the flow. And they just do that thousands and thousands of times with everything. Well, there'll be a big stream of truth. Like what you were talking about, intuition is super important. Intuition connected to wisdom. For the biblical people out there, wisdom was always in the Bible referred to as a she, as feminine. And in my book, it is right up there with God. Like wisdom is like the feminine aspect of God, intuition that we bear, that same image that we reflect of our creator. Now, nowadays we have people that are in the new age space. But for instance, like Aubrey Marcus, this just came up, has been, on a lot of people's minds and different feeds in that world because of the polyamory and all that stuff. And then also for me, seeing him as a male role model to people who is giving what I think is bad advice about becoming very feminine, becoming feminized. The truth is we need to connect more to that intuition and that wisdom, which has a female aspect. The little slipstream, a little cut away from the main river is making men female, emotionally more vulnerable, maybe too vulnerable, less of a strong deterrent for predatory behavior.
Yeah, well said. Yeah, I mean, there's just all kinds of ways to hijack people. And so when you have somebody that gets really popular, there's going to be great pressure on them to take things in a direction that would, so like cult leaders don't start off as cult leaders, but then they get hijacked in order to make sure that group doesn't gain the capacity to heal humanity in powerful ways. So it's really something to consider when you step into leadership, to watch out and to have a powerful group of people around you to make sure to help you keep yourself in check as to what might hijack you, because the forces that control this realm, they adjust. Like if you graduate from one program, there's another program waiting to try to hijack you. And so the stronger you get, the more those programs advance, and you have to be very aware of that. Otherwise you'll fall prey to it, and you can hurt yourself and many people in the process.
Absolutely.
Yeah, very good advice.
And I love what you're saying speaks so much to this like epiphany I had. When was it, babe? Like last week or something. It was just like, it just hit me. And it was things that I'd heard like years ago, like a little bit of some things I'd heard, but it was just like I had just had this moment where it just hit. And you know, when you just like, I get it. And I just had this epiphany of like this realm and the life that we experience, it kind of is almost like this massive like video game. Like it's like, and like what you're saying, like the programs, and it's like, you know, people often talk about in this space, like the non-player characters, which is like probably the majority of the population. And I think we choose whether we want to come and just like be this non-player character and just like go through the motions and experience like the normal life or whatever. And then, you know, you can come and choose to be the hero. You can come and choose to be the villain. I feel like, you know, God gave us free will. And I think that we come here and we choose our experience, but it's almost like this game where there's so many layers to it and different levels and different stages. And, you know, and I do think that we have choice at every step of the way. And that's what I believe that even, you know, the non-player characters, I think they can choose to change that at any point in time. Whether they do or not is a completely different story, but we do have that power.
It's the archetype of Pinocchio, right? Becoming a real boy. Yeah, they can always awaken.
Yeah.
And there's usually a journey that comes with it.
Yeah.
Yeah. The Toltecs say that we have a chance at having a chance, and we have to pluck that cubic centimeter of chance. You have to be aware, you know, like they even say that there's not a next life. This is it. You gotta be all in on this one, because all the lifetimes that we have, they're all happening simultaneously. So they're called parallel lives rather than past or future lives. The linear concept it's a very limiting concept. We're non-linear beings. And absolutely, what we call the NPCs, if you scratch the surface, deep down, they're all shamanic creatures. They all have this. They all are born of ancestors that were deeply connected to the mother. But the programming is so powerful that they might as well just be NPCs, because it's pretty baked in that they're not likely to make any changes unless they have a near-death experience or some sort of unique, some sort of shift that moves their, what we call the assemblage point. And the assemblage point is what keeps humanity pinned down, is that our perception as little babies and little kids, it moves all over the place. But then we end up isolating that assemblage point to just one position. And that's what keeps the world seeming so physical and fixed. And we want to be able to move that perception to places where we can go in other layers. Otherwise, we end up feeling lost and confused, because some part of us knows there's so much more to this world than what meets the eye. And we need to develop the capacity to see with our inner eye and be able to see these other layers and start to consider our possibilities. So it's very difficult to make the true changes that are needed. But if you save your energy and you stop wasting it on things that don't matter, then you have this incredible opportunity to have a really powerful life and a powerful death. There's an alternative way of dying, and we refer to it as keeping your awareness intact rather than recycling it. And so you want to be very conscious of the potential of this lifetime, because it will affect all your other parallel lives too, if you're able to make use and become an evolutionary creature rather than a de-evolutionary creature. And it's really painful and sad to reach the end of your life and to feel all the regret for not having made use of this time. and that's what usually happens. So we don't want to end up in that situation where we become where we have dementia or Alzheimer's. People think that has to do with this, that, and the other, but it just has to do with the assemblage point. So we do want to learn how to have a fluid perception. But if your perception becomes too fluid, then you become schizophrenic. So it's actually a really
Mm.
difficult balance to figure out.
So interesting.
Yeah. I want to bounce back just real quick to what you were saying earlier about the Mayans figuring out how to exit this dimension, so to speak. And
Yeah.
I just thought it was curious. There's so much of this Toltec wisdom, and Carlos Castaneda, I'm not sure exactly where he was from, but it seems like there's a lot of it centered in that Central America and in the Mayan area. Is this kind of the lineage of this Toltec stuff? Is that from the Mayans?
Well, ancient Mexico and the Mayans were more in, more further south, but this whole realm, whether it's the Druids or, the Inuit in Alaska or the Toltecs in ancient Mexico, we all stem from shamanic lineages. Every single person. We used to all live with our power, and we were all capable of going from one layer of the onion to the other. But we got caught in what they call an eddy, like in a river where the water gets trapped and it's spinning in circles. That's what's happened to us. We're spun out, and we're meant to be continuing our journey, not just staying in one place. And so this is just one of many worlds, and these forces that have been manipulate us in dream time and in waking hours. They figured out how to make us convinced that this is the only world that there is, and that makes us just like basically we might as well just be chickens in a chicken coop. We've fallen victim to a very powerful predator, and so, but yeah, the Mayans gave us that gift of disappearing in large numbers as a means to remind us that that's possible. And gazing arts, like the natives would wear a piece of jade on their nose so that their eyes would cross, so that they could constantly see the world differently. So you don't ever get caught in the physical world and think that this is all there is. So when I'm gazing, all of a sudden my eyes will rotate a little bit and the world starts to move. And it's like being on mushrooms. And I don't need any mushrooms in order to get to that place. It's very ungrounding. So you have to like practice martial arts or something in order to ground your field so that you're not floating away. So we're electrical creatures, and electricity needs to be grounded. Otherwise it'll fritz out. So it's just realizing that how to take care of your electricity and how to properly balance your magnetism. And once you figure these things out and you don't get caught up in becoming a tool for these forces, becoming a cult leader or whatever, then you become independently sovereign and capable of pursuing perception in really powerful ways. The Mayans left us incredible teachings, as did the Toltecs. And they say that Mexico City, the Valley of Mexico, is the assemblage point of the earth. So it's a very, very powerful spot to go and to receive direct knowledge by just being in the presence of that ancient power. And that power is still very alive down there. There's a lot of brujos and brujas and shamans in this world, but most of them got caught up in black magic because it's so much easier to access. It's a much more difficult path to go slow and to not fall for the seduction of power. There's two different types of power in this world: power in this life or power in the afterlife. And Toltecs seek power in the afterlife. They don't want anything to do with power in this life, because this place is like designed, to hijack us if we're take it too seriously, or our ego gets caught up in being able to manipulate things for financial gain or for sexual gain. All men are usually challenged with either, sex, money, or power as a means to hijack them. So you have to become very discerning and be sensitive to all the different ways in which your ego will be flattered, so that you don't fall for these traps. But yeah, the Mayans are incredible beings that were able to walk right out of here by spending many, many years transferring their awareness over to these other layers until they were felt safe and ready to make that final jump.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, and it's funny you mentioned that, like, you know, all these sort of indigenous cultures around the world are basically, I've always said that they're basically speaking the same language. Like, it's the same stuff. It's just, you know, maybe, you know, slightly different, you know, very small differences, but essentially, like, yeah, there's so many things you've already mentioned that I'm like, oh, that's the indigenous Australians, the Aboriginals here are very much like practicing. Well, they definitely were in the ancient times. Like it's well known that they what do they call it? Teleport. Like they, you know, they travel, and you know, there's stories of them traveling from you know, one side of Australia to the other side, which is thousands of kilometers. I don't know how many thousands of miles in like a time that is just like, to us, we're just like, how? And it's just like, whoa, how did they do that? So yeah, there's so much that we have to learn. And again, you see these targeted attacks, especially in Australia, but you see it around the world, these targeted attacks on Indigenous populations. And there's obviously a reason so that this stuff is held from us. But I love that you brought up, you know, for men specifically, some of the traps. And I kind of would love to also ask you, like, with this knowledge and sort of, you know, really cultivating your own power and sort of not, you know, just sort of standing strong in your own energy, like, how do you navigate relationship? Because obviously we met in Leanne's community group, and her focus is very much on conscious relationships and sexuality and all of that stuff. And you know, Isaac and I know firsthand that relationship is can be such a powerful vehicle for transformation, healing, growth, all of that stuff. But there's always going to be sort of a little bit of that push and pull because you've got these two energies. So like, how do you sort of navigate your relationship with, you know, the knowledge that you have, but also again, living in this 3D reality and, you know, sort of the practicalities of life?
Yeah, so Toltecs are really focused on pure affection and practicing dreaming consciousness together. So sexual energy and dreaming energy are one and the same. And so saving that energy, building that energy, and using it for exploring. Like you could be in the middle of lovemaking and then just stop and look around in the room, and there's like a fog that enters the room, and you can just practice gazing together and like switch completely over to this other way of interacting with that energy that you just built up. So, but if you're just going after the orgasm or whatever, then you're going to miss out on all these like really magical ways of connecting. So it is finding that balance. Toltecs say that some shamans have to be celibate because they weren't born with the amount of energy that allows them to do both. So it has to do with your conception. If you were conceived in a powerful way, then you can do both easily. But some shamans have to be celibate in order to reset their field. And once they gain access to their astral body, then they can go back to having sex again. But you do want to take some time to heal your energy if need be. But my elders said that there's only two tribes in this world: the tribe of man and the tribe of woman. And if those two tribes can learn to work together, then we can totally change the situation that we're in. But because most of humanity is caught up in their genitals only, they're not using the depths of their chakra system in order to evolve. And so it's a really tricky territory. And so I appreciate Leanne is really focused on the evolution of love and to be conscious of how powerful it can affect the totality of humanity. Just a few powerful couples can make a difference just by being the model for what it means to embody a more conscious relationship. But there's power dynamics to be honest about, and we can't pretend that it's easy. We have to be aware of the different ways in which these forces try to hijack and interfere with a powerful couple. It's just the way this world's designed. So you're going to go through trials. And so sexual shadow work is just the most important thing one can do if you're going to try and evolve as a union, to have a sacred union. Um, Being on the same path and being open to learning about the dreaming arts, being open to learning about the evolution of, sacred sexuality, um, and keeping that in the container. But if the man is looking outside of the container and he's attracted and he's not being, respectful of that, how that affects the woman, or vice versa, then it starts to become leaky, and then that
Mm.
can really damage the relationship. But you also don't want to pretend that you're not attracted to other women. Women are beautiful. You can't pretend that you don't see women as beautiful. You can't like lie. You got to go through the honesty and be open to the conversations and the intensity that comes with an honest relationship. So when we come out of perversion and practice celibacy and semen retention, and as a man, you start to respect your power and you start to respect the potential of a sacred relationship. And for women to be conscious of how they can support a man so that they're not pointing the finger at him and blaming him for any areas in which he still is undeveloped. We have to respect each other's humanness. We're all
Mm.
human. We all have holes in our consciousness. And in order to grow together, you can't expect each other to be perfect. So these conversations have to be had. So communication is everything. And often, if we don't start off with healthy communication, it's hard to re implement healthy communication. So, like Rachel and I ended up splitting up, but we were working really hard to try to heal a difficult past. And it turned out to be too difficult to fix. And that's okay. We're going to now go in our own separate directions and be able to heal from having had a really difficult time. But we met each other inside of a cult, essentially. So it wasn't an easy
Mm.
thing to reset. But, life's intense and it's a new chapter for us. So it doesn't mean we didn't do powerful work together. We did.
Mm.
So it's just a matter of being knowing and listening, and not trying to force things, and just being really conscious about what you as an individual need to do in order to follow your heart and your longing, and do your best to communicate what those desires and feelings are presenting. And so I help couples to learn how to communicate with each other in new ways so that they can expand their capacity to hold space for each other.
I love that. And on the communication, I can't remember what it was you talked about on the interview I listened to, but it was something about like a particular like method of communication. And I think you said that you had done it with your wife. I don't know if there's a particular name. Do you know what I'm talking about?
I'm not sure, but we were working with a woman that was helping us to tap into some nonlinear ways of communicating, and we were
Oh
practicing
wow.
like these types of, you know, being really honest about feelings, talking about what we see in each other,
Mm.
really just creating sacred containers for conversation. So you commit to like types some pretty vulnerable conversations on the daily, and you hold you offer, you want to keep the fire going. That doesn't mean you has to be sexual, but you want to keep the energy running. So there's ways of showing up for each other to where you're respecting the fact that you've made this commitment, so that you can like lend each other the space and the fire that you need in order to keep the warmth and the affection. But yeah, there's so many different ways of learning to have nonlinear and also learn to use your words. But there's a type of communication that's done just through the eyes. So eye gazing, learning to converse with your parallel being, having in-depth, uh, almost like there's ways of making love without even touching each other, where you're just like
Mm.
building the energy and building the energy, and you're locked in eye to eye, and you start to just like feel the energy rise and be really in a sacred way with that, and it's really magical.
Yeah, that sounds incredible. And yeah, I think that was the what you were talking about. That's what I'd heard you speaking about previously. And again, I think that's amazing, because I think, yeah, I mean, communication, that's our, like, I'm big into human design, and that's the throat center is the manifestation center. It's, what and how we communicate is so, so important. And then especially in relationship and how we relate to each other. And it can be really difficult sometimes to be, I'm known to be quite brutally honest sometimes. And so I have to be kind of careful with my words and how I say things. And so I think that's such a, any tool that can help foster that communication and the honesty without, getting defensive and causing arguments and disagreements. And it's fine to have disagreements. Isaac and I are really good at that. I feel like repairing, where we can be really honest with each other, and there might be, might feel a bit abrasive, or, there might be a bit of backlash, but we repair pretty quickly because we know it comes from a place of love.
Beautiful. Yeah, there's so many different ways to be more careful with each other's hearts. You become more conscious of respecting each other, where they're at, and having vision and following signs and omens as to what the connection is designed to experience. And you start to trust that vision instead of expecting that person to be different than they are in the moment. You start to see their potential to move into a more in depth. So most people are operating from their junior feminine or their junior masculine, and you want to move into your senior and then eventually the divine. But that takes a lifetime usually to fully occupy the divine feminine and divine masculine. And every man has their feminine side. But it's been flipped, where a lot of men are becoming more feminine and women are having to become more masculine. And that's a really dangerous thing for society, that we're seeing. So that's why there's so much confusion. We have to be realistic about things and start to talk about solutions, because people are going to get really lost, and we're going to need to be those leaders and way showers and visionaries to help people return. My friend Tommy was hanging out with this guy that it was an old friend of his, and he'd convinced himself that he was going to be turned into a woman, and he had fallen for all those storylines. And after spending time with my friend, he finally kind of snapped out of it, and he kind of saved him from, removing his genitals. I mean, it was going that far, right?
Wow.
So,
oh wow, that's so
crazy.
good that that's so good that because we're just here. Like, honestly, it's actually really wild now how, like, I've heard, like, just in the last month or so, I've heard, like, old family friends that, their daughter's turning into a boy now, and they've had the surgery to remove their breasts. And it's so wild to me, and especially for me, like, I got breast implants at the age of, like, in my 20s, and I just had them removed last year because they were making me unwell. And I'm just like, that was such a huge thing. And that's got nothing to do with, like, changing my gender. Not that you can change your gender, which is, like, that's the one takeaway is, like, you literally cannot change your gender. You can have all these surgeries. I see these surgeries as self-mutilation. And it's so, so sad that young boys and girls, because this is where the programming is starting, at these very young ages, that they're being led down this path where they're literally mutilating their body. And we still don't know the long-term effects. We don't know the impact of these people's health in 10 years time, 20 years time. And I'm just talking physical health. Obviously there's so much more in terms of emotional, mental, spiritual health when that's being done, because again, I just think it's a huge agenda to just bring people so far away from who they truly are. I mean, that's the ultimate, like, distraction is, like, if you don't even know who you are physically, how are you ever going to know who you are internally,
Oh, it's such a hijack, and it's really well done what they're doing to distort humanity in that way. But it's going to take it just is what it is, and it's a really disturbing element to how easily manipulated people are. And I know a lot of parents are at fault. They're going along with these agendas, and they're convincing their kids instead of letting the kid grow up and go through their tomboy stage or whatever stage of confusion. That's normal to be,
Yeah.
a tomboy or something. But the fact that they introduced that medicine to slow down the puberty process or whatever, it's just it's really wicked. It's real sorcery, and it's helping people like you and I to become more aware of just how dangerous it is to be susceptible to these forces. But it's a real tragedy.
Yeah.
And I see it having an awakening impact on people that can see it, where they're really starting to reclaim and stand their ground as far as this is what a woman is. Like, I've seen women adamantly just saying, I used to think, women should be the boss in this big CEO thing. And now I'm seeing them really reclaiming their power in motherhood, in the softer and fundamental elements of being a woman, and not chasing after the masculine hat, and knowing and like really connecting to the power of this. They're not, it's not the way that the mainstream likes to portray it, where, oh, you're just a mother. Oh, like women have been, oppressed by the masculine. And there's an argument for the opposite. But I think in some of these tribes, the women just emanate their own power through the feminine nature of their power, and the men emanate their power through the masculine nature of their power, and they can both exist simultaneously. And I think a lot of human history was that.
And that's the inversion, right? Like in modern society, the conditioning is that the like softening into your feminine is weak, but like our feminine, as women, our femininity is where our power lies.
That's it. Yeah. So women have an advantage in the world of intuition, dreaming, shamanism, and men have an advantage in the physical world. They can easily fight, or they can dominate physically. But women, when given an opportunity to develop their feminine, their soft side, their yin side, they are really gifted, and that gift needs to be supported by a powerful man. So a man that is aware will find a woman to ward and protect, so that she can move deeper into her feminine, and then that feminine will that female will then be a spiritual protector of that man by using her intuition to tell him things that could help him to become stronger and more resourceful, and be able to provide for that woman. So it becomes a spiritual union when it's all in balance. But when it gets inverted, everybody gets confused, and there's a lot of bitterness that happens, and it's really difficult. So, but we're in a time where it's really tricky to figure this out, because you end up in divorce court because the man was providing for the woman, and then the woman wants to take all of his money, and then there's like fighting over the kids. And so we don't want to go back to the 1950s. That's not going to work. Right? We got to be conscious of the fact we're in a new time, and we got to start being really evolutionary in our thinking on how to be in this situation without each other getting hurt, because ultimately the power struggle still plays out no matter what. So I think studying like the Toltec stuff is really helpful, because when a woman is capable of lucid dreaming, then she's going to be more in tune with whether her man is capable of protecting and warding for her. And she starts not just depending on him, but she starts using her psychic abilities to ask the right questions. And coming back to communication dreaming is communication. Telepathy is communication. There's all kinds of communication, and we all need to be more tuned. And men have powerful intuition as well. They can sense when a woman is, not being loyal or something. So there's lots to consider here.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I would be kicking myself not to ask you this since we got you on, because totally switching gears, but it's I think it's still relatively connected to this. You'll probably see some of this, but animal totems or spiritual symbolism of animals. In particular, what I want to ask you about is snakes, because we've been having some very up close and frequent experiences with snakes that are very unusual. And in particular, there's like, the second most deadly snake in the world, the black or the eastern brown. And I haven't seen any since we've lived here. And then this year, as soon as spring hit, we've seen
firstly,
3.
I've been here almost 4 years. And in that 4 years, I think we've seen 2 brown snakes at completely different times. We saw them once, they went, we never saw them again. One was down at my parents' place, and then one was up here near my place, again, probably like a year apart, and never seen them. We've had 3 in the last month, literally circling the house. Like it's but even the snake catcher that's been coming is like, this is very odd behavior for snakes.
Wow, cool. Yeah. That's exciting. Yeah.
So what are some things from your perspective that it means? Because when you just Google spiritual meaning of snakes, it's anybody's guess as to the validity of that information. But
yeah, I mean, the elders in my lineage would say that snake medicine is the closest to the earth, the most earth medicine you can get to, because their whole body is touching the earth almost at all times. Snakes serve as powerful animal support to have in your life, even especially ones that are dangerous. So your ability to be closer to the earth is going to give you the greatest source of power. I think Australia is referred to as Snake Island, where over here it's referred to as Turtle Island. So, but yeah, we had a rattlesnake come into our sweat lodge, and while no one was in there, but we couldn't do lodge until the rattlesnake left. And we had people watching to see when the rattlesnake would leave, like standing guard all night and all day. And it never left, but then we opened the lodge and it was gone. So they're very powerful beings that can transport from one place to another without being seen. I don't put too much investment into the interpretations. I believe every animal is the Earth Mother herself, and that when you're looking in the eyes of a cat or a dog or anything, you're looking in the eyes of the mother, and that they're all just expressions of the mother, just like every woman is a different aspect of the mother. And so there's all these different archetypes and different systems to play with. But when you have a lot of a particular type of creature coming into your life, it's to get you closer to the earth, to let you know you're being worked with. It's really powerful signs and omens. Often you will, if you can hear the snake, it'll give you a name. It'll give you a name to use in your ceremonies to call yourself. So it's hard to hear those messages, but our ability to become animal communicators is a pretty huge thing that can change our life. Because when you're having conversation with animals of any kind, then you start to become more expansive in your ability to be telepathic and receive that stuff. That's really cool, though.
Yeah, it's very interesting because we've got pythons on the property, and I love the pythons, and they've kind of always hung around my house. They go and sunbake up on the roof. They often will hibernate underneath my house during winter. And I've always felt very akin to them, especially the pythons in particular, because they're very slow moving. Like they're just very much like me. They've often leave us when they shed their skin. And like, to me, that's just like such a clear, symbol of rebirth and transformation and all of that. And we keep the skins and, for sure. This is why I think it's so important for us to, and look, I know it's not feasible for everyone to like move out of the cities and suburbs and, especially with families and things like that, but just to be in nature as much as possible, because that's what I mean. A lot of these like spontaneous healings and things that have happened for me have happened to me on this land. And it is because I'm literally surrounded by trees and all these different animals, the snakes and literally during our interview, we've had a bush turkey walking by the window. He's also been kind of circling the house the last week, either looking for a mate or looking for food or who knows. And we've got goannas, and we literally had the goannas mating right out the front of our right off the front porch one day, like in front of us. And it's just interesting to like watch them and how they behave and like how they go through their cycles. It's such a nice reminder of these cycles of life that we go through, you know, hibernating through winter and coming out in spring, and you start to see everything come out and they start to nest and they start to mate, and it's so beautiful. And I just think that, yeah, like you said, the more that we can connect to that, I think that really does help us on our own journey.
Yeah, I'm living on 20 acres with all these deer, and just every morning I'm just surrounded by so many deer, and they just got so used to me, and it's just so magical to be with them. And I was sun gazing with a fox the other morning where it came up and it was staring at the sun right next to me, and you know, just the amount of birds that come through this land, it's just like all different kinds. Like all of a sudden there's this brand new type of bird that shows up one morning I've never seen, and the most beautiful bright reds and yellows, and just the bird song, the lovebirds, and they're just singing to each other, and it's just such ecstatic energy to be connected to. And when you are quiet and silent and you really are observing them, you feel like you are them. You know, you feel like you're flying with them. You feel, or if you're just observing a tree, you can feel as rooted as a tree. And so we get to, shamans, their focus is to mimic an animal and learn to shapeshift into that animal. And so if you have snakes coming around, you're being offered that opportunity, you know, to shed your skin, to take off your social mask, you know, to unmask your to take the cover off of your being and to become more exposed, and to shapeshift into your next version of yourself, because we're not meant to remain the same. But these beings are messengers, and it's very powerful medicine to be around. But I also love meditating in the streets of New York, and I don't feel disconnected from the mother. But that took some work. You know, it's not easy to feel that earth mother connection in places where there's all concrete. It's really intense. But once that happens, then you feel very liberated. So I had to spend a lot of time saturated in nature in order to be able to do that. So there's just so much potential wherever you go.
Yeah. Yeah, that's incredible. It's funny, actually, because I was talking to a friend the other day, and she was like, I hate going up to, you know, just about half an hour north of us is the Queensland border, and there's, you know, kind of like a, you know, more of like the city and stuff. She's like, oh, I hate going up there, and the energy and the people, and it's like too much. And it's funny because I kind of reflected in myself. I was like, oh, I don't mind it too much. But I grew up everywhere. I grew up on the beach and semi-rural and, you know, close to the city in the inner west of Sydney. And there's something about it for me that, when I am, you know, living the way that we're living now, I feel fine. Like I used to be, it's funny, when I first moved and then I'd go back to Sydney, I felt like hypersensitive to everything. And then after about a year, I got really, and again, doing a lot of like deep inner work, lots of shadow work, all that stuff. I find that I'm so much stronger in myself that it just doesn't affect me as much. And then I am able to appreciate, like I said to Isaac, the last time I was down there, I actually love, like, I was like, oh, I could just walk everywhere. I could just 5 minutes and I can walk down to the shops. And like, so I can just enjoy these differences and not be super negative about it.
Yeah. The Toltec say to be of your time, and that you want to be able to go into the matrix and even work for like a tyrant or somebody with a massive ego, and make sure that you're capable of keeping your center and not being offended. But you also need a place to go, like the desert or somewhere really remote, in order to practice silence and be alone. And, you know, so a shaman will always have a little bit of everything going on as a means to sort of balance their being. And I love San Francisco and LA and New York. These places are powerful for me, where everybody else is like, what do you do? Why would you go there? I'm like, I love people. I love, like, people are like a sea of energy, and I don't look at anybody. I just cut through the crowd, like in the Matrix, where you're just like everything parts for you because you're
Mm.
just totally focused. So to me, this place is a dream, and it just has to do with your perception of the dream. So like some of my friends, their biggest breakthroughs happen in prison or in jail, right? So it just depends on how you perceive your situation.
Yeah,
Mm.
that's definitely true. And I think these situations and from a big city to jail, like I've experienced all that and had what I would describe as like it reflects back to you your energy. So
Yeah,
these, the people that have this maybe an internal battle in themselves, they'll go into a city and see chaos and fighting and all this stuff.
Mm.
And
exactly.
I just kind of go in with a sense of childlike wonder and awe a lot of the time
Yeah.
and have a great experience and then leave. Like, um, I think, well, it's funny. I don't know if I've shared the jail story here, but just for an example, like I learned about just doing breath work and its simplest forms, but was fascinated with it and using that to reconnect and to release energy and move things. And I spent a few days in jail one time and was roomed up with a guy who was probably pretty fresh off of breaking his whatever the meth addiction that he was on. So he went through his
Sure.
rage and like literally scared his former cellmate out. I went right in there, had no idea who he was, and literally like talking to him, teaching him like breath work in the cell, and just literally
Cool.
having a great conversation with this guy and being like, I hope that guy does well. He's very powerful, but he's very poisoned.
Cool.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
and then
that's
leaving
awesome.
and being fine, and the jail thing was cleared up. Everything was exonerated and all that. But that was part of, I think, closing out certain karmic things and
Cool.
releasing things that I was holding that needed to be let go of. Very
Yeah.
interesting.
Mm.
Yeah, I had one of the medicine women that I worked with. She would bring in somebody off the streets as a means to teach us. She would bring somebody in that'd been on meth for 15 years and do an exorcism in front of us because
Wow.
they usually have lots of attachments, lots of
Mm.
entities.
Yeah.
And it was just like, wow, what an incredible thing to do. He's probably just going to go do more meth when he's done, but at least he got it helped us all to see that it's possible that even someone that far along can get help. And
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
so you never know, and I have a very checkered past. I hung out with I really enjoyed babysitting schizophrenic people, and they would keep me entertained and I would keep them out of jail, and it was fun. It was an understanding, and we would take LSD and we would do lots of unique things and walk all over Seattle together and have real adventures. And people with flexible perceptions tend to get into substances, but
Mm.
they were traumatized kids. It wasn't likely they were going to do anything else because they were raised in really terrible environments. So you can't blame them. They just
Mm.
were a product of the situation they were raised in. So, it's just about suspending judgment and being open to the richness of everyone's story, because everyone has a powerful story, whether it's traumatic or magical or a combination of both.
Yeah,
Yeah, exactly.
absolutely. And Joel, where are you now? You're in California, aren't you?
No, I'm in Montana right now, but I'm actually going to be moving and I'm going to be nomadic for a while. I'll be down in Austin, Texas for a couple months maybe, and then I haven't decided where I'm going to go next, but I might end up in California.
Nice. Yeah, I wasn't sure where you were. I just assumed because I was like, oh, maybe that's where you and Leanne met, but I wasn't sure. But yeah, interesting. We're actually about to catch up with a friend before he leaves he's bought a one-way ticket overseas and he's kind of going to be on that journey too. I think a lot of people, it's interesting when you start to sort of, start hearing like different things from different people that kind of like there seems to be like this similar energy in the air. So definitely a season of change, I think we're in.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a lot of shifting happen. I was just hanging out with Leanne in California in LA. My son and I went over there to celebrate his 21st birthday,
Oh,
so he could have his
nice.
first proper drink and stuff. It was really fun. And we went to jazz clubs and just really got to live it up. And so Leanne and I got to hang out for the first time in person. It was really cool.
Awesome. Oh, that's amazing. And I love that you just mentioned that too, because I think people often think that, oh, you're going to do this work and it's so serious and whatever. And it's like, no, you can still live life and have fun and have a drink every now and then. And
Yeah.
I've definitely, found that balance in the last few years, because you tend to do the pendulum swing. Like I was like a party animal in my 20s, and I was like, oh no, that's all bad. We can't do that. And then it's like, no, you got to find the balance. You still got to live life and have fun.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love all kinds of people, and I go to live music a lot, and it's not the kind of people I would do medicine work with, but I love to dance, and I love to experience crowds, and I love to, be part of different groups for different feelings, different reasons. And there's just so much to experience when you don't put limitations on yourself.
Yeah. I think it's cool synchronicity. So I have a grown daughter that's she turned 22 this year, just a month ago.
Yeah.
So yeah, she didn't do the 21 go out to drink. She's her own woman. She's not interested in that kind of stuff. She's just happy she does art and helps me with my business with natural art form. And
cool.
these kids, man, I love it. I'm excited for their a lot of people talk about that, like, oh, what's this world they're going to have to grow up in? I know that stopped a lot of people from even having children. Like, oh, well, how could I bring a child into this world? And again, that's a reflection of their energy, I think.
I was going to say, that's been
for the world these kids are growing up in. I know there's challenges, but we have the strength to rise to those challenges.
Yeah, I was going to say, that's been my biggest motivation to change not only myself, but make any impact on the world that I can, so that we can change the world for our future generations.
Yeah, my friend always said all the people that are not having kids because they're aware of how difficult things are, they're the ones that should be raising kids, because they can see what's going on and they can teach the kids how to be more aware. And those are the kind of kids we need to bring into this world, because that's what will change the world. So there's just so many times where we get flipped on what's the priority and we miss out on so much potential. So yeah, this is a dream, and it's going to be okay. The world has a way of working itself out. Like, I know a lot of people that are so scared about Bitcoin or silver or gold and what's going to work. And it's like, I know I'm going to be fine. I used to hitchhike out of my own house with no money and start over in a new town just to prove that the universe will provide for you wherever you go, as long as you're open to people would pull over and they'd say, I've never picked up a hitchhiker in my life. I don't know why my car pulled over. And I'm just like, it's because there's this guidance system. And if you're meant to be okay, then you will be. And you got to sometimes go out and test that in order to realize how powerful you are. So I'm not afraid. I refuse to live in fear. And I just think that if more people do that, then we can really have a really powerful life, collectively.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that's such a beautiful place to end on. I would love to, I think we could talk to you for hours, Joel. Like, this has been such a fascinating conversation, despite all the tech issues. And I actually just said to Isaac the last time it dropped out, I said, interesting how it's kind of the more we've moved a little more away from the shamanic talk, the connection seems to have not been as interfered with. So it's just something very interesting to note.
Yeah, well, you've given me a lot to think about, and I'm excited to see what this pebble in the pond turns into, because I'm definitely on that path. And I know you do work. You teach a bit of this stuff. I don't know what else you have on offer. Like, are there any programs that you have going right now?
Let people know how they can work with you.
Yeah, we just started a course called Tracking, and we meet 3 times a month for 3 months, and we do the movements, and we practice this recapitulation work, and we read from Castaneda and have discussions around it. Leanne joined the group recently. And so it's just, so many really amazing people that come to one course after another. I make it sliding scales so that people can afford to do it if they're on a budget challenge. And in Sedona, Arizona, we'll be meeting on December 6th and 7th outdoors to do this work in person. And then, in January, I'll start another online course. And then in April, we'll meet in person again. But most people work with me one-on-one. I mentor, 90-minute or 60-minute sessions. So joelschafer.com, you can find all this information on my website.
Awesome. Thank you. And I think
Perfect.
we're going to have to book a session, especially when you said, well, I know that you worked with couples, but now that Isaac sort of officially met you, I'm like, yeah, I think this is just like such fascinating work. But again, within the container of a relationship, I just think is so powerful.
Yeah, it is. It's really amazing. So you're welcome anytime, and look forward to connecting again. I really appreciate you having me on. It was great to meet you guys and to connect further.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you so
absolutely.
much for coming on.